Hey guys, Pretzelman945 here, coming at you with my first official list upload. Now this one is kind of a fun one to me. It's one of the lists that every time I make it, I always have such a fun time making it, and that is my top, what I consider to be the top 10 worst films in existence. Now, please keep in mind this is only my opinion, because I understand there are a lot of films on here that people really like. Now, at number 10, and possibly the most controversial pick on this list, though there are a lot of those, is Back to the Future. Now, I know a lot of people love this movie, but for me, when I saw it, it was a movie I really wanted to like, but I just have never liked it ever. Just when I saw it, I didn't connect with it, and I don't think I ever will, which is kind of sad because I really wanted to like it. At number 9 is this movie called The Life of Pi. Now, this movie is based off a book also called The Life of Pi, which is basically how the story is like a man befriends a tiger, but the whole movie is just incredibly weird, and the whole plot is messy, and it's honestly just a complete mess of a film. At number 8 is It's a Wonderful Life. This is without a doubt the most boring film I have ever seen in my life. Now, the most relevant point I make when I reference this film is this is a normal plot diagram of a movie. This is the plot diagram for It's a Wonderful Life. The flat line, in case you were wondering, is exposition. So, yeah, if that gives you any idea as to how boring I think this movie is, I don't think I can state any clearer. At number 7, and this kind of pains me to put a Star Wars movie here, but Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. There are so many things wrong with this film that it's going to take a while to listen. So, firstly, the acting is pretty terrible, particularly by Hayden Christensen, but even the high-profile actors, with the exception of Ian McDiarmid, like Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman, are just kind of bland and uninteresting, and George Lucas clearly proves that he is not a good director of actors. Second, the dialogue is terrible. There is so much cheesy romantic writing in here, and it just makes me sick every time I have to watch this film. Third thing, there is way too much CG in this film. Like a complete over-reliance on CG. It is shot in CG, and the creatures are computer generated, and the whole thing just has way too much CG in it, to the point where it's just ridiculous. It's like watching a mix unfold on your screen. At number 6 is Frozen. Now, I hated this film from the moment I saw it. Or, I should say, I didn't like it. That's more accurate way of putting it. I've grown to hate it more over the years, and I think the plot is really cheesy. I will say the one thing I respect about the film is the relationship between Elsa and Anna, because I like those kinds of sister relationships in a film, but otherwise, and Olaf. Olaf is probably the one redeeming quality of this entire film because his quips are moderately funny. Otherwise, this film is just a complete trash heap to me. But what is the absolute worst is the music. Oh God, the songs. Oh, I hate Let It Go and like Love is an Open Door and all of those songs are among my least favorites of all time. Genuinely, I do not like them at all. And they constantly get stuck in my head and it annoys me to no end. Now, number 5, somehow even worse than Frozen, and taking the title easily for the worst animated movie I have ever seen in my life, is Trolls. Okay, several things wrong with this film. One, terrible plot, like ridiculous plot that makes no sense. Two, stupid, predictable characters that are not appealing at all to watch. Three, really, really terrible music. Even worse than Frozen. Frozen's music is the equivalent of, how shall we say, um, let's say eating an unpleasant food that you don't like. Trolls music is the equivalent of burning in a dumpster fire. Both are incredibly unpleasant, but one is much, much worse than the other. Overall, I cannot stand this film. I think the concept is so stupid, and the characters are incredibly dumb, and the music is beyond just horrible. At number 4 is Iron Man 2. Now, this film, I have a great deal of things to rant about with this film. For one thing, the plot is incredibly messy and unorganized, and it feels like they're tackling 6 million plot lines within the same film. It is the pacing is all off, and I don't mind each of the individual stories, but they lack any cohesion whatsoever, which makes this film very difficult to watch. Second, the villains have to be the absolute worst in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For one, you get Whiplash, who seems like a cool villain concept, and he is kind of cool in the action scenes, I must admit. But his backstory is atrocious. We are given nothing to understand, like, what his motives are. Like, why is he mad? And, like, we only hear a little bit from him the entire game, and I want my bird. I want my bird. Like, that's all we basically hear from him, and I never really have an idea of what his plans are until the final act when all the robot suits start attacking. And honestly, the last 10 minutes are really the highlight of the film because that's when all the action goes on. Because that's another problem in this film. There's a severe lack of action. Back to the villain's problem. The other villain, and I use that in extreme air quotes because Justin Hammer is not a villain. He is this really sad excuse for a businessman that rivals Tony Stark. Like a really, really sad excuse. His whole entire character is just a pathetic attempt to get laughs, and I've never found him funny ever, and he just sucks. So back to the action problem. There is like little to no action in this film, and generally all the action is based off the character relationships, which the character relationships are pretty bad in this film. Like, Rhodey's character is just like, hey Tony, I'm here for you. Okay, wait, you're not complying with the government? Okay, sorry, I gotta take you out and steal your suit, give it to the army. So, like, he's a complete hypocrite. And some people might say, oh, the introduction of Black Widow, and that's really the only thing this is used for, is basically just a plot device in the MCU. I feel like that's all this movie is good for, and not really anything else. To be, if it had better action, better villains and villain and antagonist motivations, and most importantly, better pacing and a more cohesive storyline, I think this movie really could have been quite a good MCU movie. But because of all these errors, and it's honestly another thing to bring up, this movie was rushed a year because Jon Favreau wanted 3 years to work on this, but Marvel only allowed him 2. So, therefore, I cut Jon Favreau a little slack. But that does not excuse the problems of this film. So, like I was saying, with better action, better character relationships and villain motivations, and most importantly, better pacing and a more cohesive storyline, I really think this movie could have been a lot better. And it's really a crying shame that it was such a disappointment. Anyway, on to number 3, The Wizard of Oz. I watched this film when I was 5, and I never liked it. Ever. Like, I knew when I was 5 that I didn't like this movie. I remember it was 4. It was a really young age that I knew I didn't like this movie. I think I will applaud this movie for one thing, and one thing only. Actually, 2 things. 2 small things. 1, the music is pretty good. 2, I really do applaud this film for being one of the first films in color. Otherwise, this film is basically just another trash heap. So, all the characters are really, really cheesy, and all of them have pretty bad dialogue. And I just don't get how people find this story memorable. I really don't. I think the story is incredibly corny, and I understand the archetypes behind each of the characters, but I just do not root for them at all. And I just don't agree with I just don't like their journey. So I appreciate the archetypes they were going for with each of the different characters, but all of them in a group together is terrible. And Oz is possibly one of the biggest disappointments I've ever seen, because he's supposed to be this almighty wizard, and then we get this backstory that he's some guy that accidentally traveled there and has been there for a while. And oh my god, the Munchkins. The Munchkins. They are so incredibly annoying and so stupid. And everything about this film can pretty much be described in one word: stupid. Number 2 is Jumanji. Now, this film, I think, has a stupid plot and is quite honestly one of the most ridiculous movies I have ever seen in my life. So the movie is about a board game that is cursed, which already great, makes sense a lot, makes a load of sense there. And it's about this board game that supposedly comes to life, and the amount of ridiculous things that happen in this film is nothing short of spectacular to me. Because this is honestly just, there's so many weird, ridiculous elements happening on the screen all the time that I never really know what's going on. And the plot concept is entirely ridiculous, and the pacing just throws you from one place to another constantly. And I have always hated this film. But at number one, and this is kind of a dual rant here, but the worst movie and also the worst book I have ever seen in my life, and I'm doing a separate review on how bad the book is later on. This movie has the worst acting I have ever seen in my life. The blandness of the actors just continually sucks. Second, the characters are so bad. Now, granted, that is the book's fault, but I'll still be going through each and every character. So, firstly, we have Sarni. Now, first off, first place award to the stupidest character name in existence category, because that is just a downright stupid name. And basically Sarni talks like this: I be Sarni, and basically talks in an English dialect that shows absolutely no knowledge of the actual English language whatsoever. Now, we come to the second character, and who this movie / book is named after, called Nightjon, who is also a contender for the stupidest character name contest. Now, basically the plot of the movie is Nightjon is this runaway slave that comes on the farm to teach people how to read and write. Now, first off, to me, if you were a slave during that time, then why the heck would you go back on, like, if you were an escaped slave, why would you go back into slavery? That makes absolutely no sense to me. And I just, so basically the plot is that everyone hates Nightjon because he's doing these illegal stuff, and basically these are the only two characters that matter and get any decent dialogue in both the book or the movie, besides the slaver who supposedly gets really mean and then just like wipes people out because of like something by the sun or something. I'll cover more about that when I do the actual book rant, but this entire just plot is really dumb. And there's this sequence where Sarni, like Nightjon, takes Sarni to this like school, and it's only for one day, and they go back to the farm and get beat up, and it's like the whole point of that entire sequence is just complete like BS. It doesn't mean anything. So, and again, this is kind of hard to talk about because I haven't done the book rant yet. This will make more sense like what I'm talking about, like when I do the book rant, to explain more things about how bad the book is. Now, what completely baffles me most of all is the fact that this got a move. Like, there are so many excellent books these days that have not gotten books at all. Now, these include like Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm, like Brave New World. Like there are so many just incredible books and stories that have not gotten movie adaptations, and then we're given this crap as a movie. It honestly just makes me very, very mad. And it is one of the many, many reasons that I hate this film and consider it to be the absolute worst film of all time. Now, these types of rant videos won't come very often. Most of my lists are much more positive than this. But thank you for listening, and bye bye.